Hey everybody, Big Toad here and welcome to my studio. In this video, we're going to have a lesson on painting this lovely lake, yellow lake with a beautiful yellow sky and some pine trees with some bedrock showing up along the shore of the lake. All right, let's get started. As typical, I start with my sketch in. And I put some mineral spirits into a burnt sienna to do my sketches. Sketching out some bedrock sticking up along the shoreline, and I'm going to put in some pine trees. And someone told me when they saw this painting that it was a bit whimsical. And I guess these trees are kind of non-traditional, not trying for obviously realism here. Just creating a a cool, nice look to them, experimenting a little bit with shapes in my pine trees. I like to do, realistic pine trees, but they don't always fit my style of painting, especially one like this. So I'll go ahead and block in the reflections, and now I'm going to the block in of the rocks. And I'm starting out with kind of a greenish color right now. Greenish yellow is this whole painting is going to be based on a similar palette to my last one, working off of yellows to greens with a little bit of blue in there, obviously. But yeah, staying between the yellows and the blues. So I'm blocking in these pine trees with a green, a little darker green, but still keeping the chroma up on them for the foreground pine trees. Going with a lighter green for the mid-ground pine trees there. They're set back a little bit further, so I'm going to lighten them up a little bit to push them back a little bit. I'm not too worried about the chroma here. I'm keeping the chroma a little bit high because just the value being lighter is going to serve to push those back, and being a kind of a yellowish, greenish painting, I can get away with a little higher chroma, even though I'm setting that back. So again, added some green to my reflections in the water, added some green to the foreground around the trees. And now I'm putting the sky in. I'm going to go with a yellowish green sky to start off with, and I'll put some nice highlights in there and do some broken color to bring out some various hues of yellow in the sky. So I'm going to start off with this kind of a palish, yellowish green sky. And I'll do the whole sky in that. And then I'm going to come back in and put in some brighter greens and or I should say brighter yellows to break that sky up and give it a little movement and variety to it. So I go right in to my water with that yellow sky color in order to give the reflection. The water is typically going to be a reflection of the sky, except where it's reflecting objects like the trees that are closest to it. Now I'm bringing in a lighter yellow, and even then before brought in some titanium white to that yellow, and just going to soften that yellow up, break up the solid color a little bit. And now I'm going to bring in some cad yellow light mixed in, and obviously I've thinned that out with a little titanium white, but I'm adding some more vibrancy to the sky. And now I'm bringing in some white to soften that up a little bit so I can redirect the highlights where I want them. I'm going to keep the left side a little duller than the right side of the sky. Putting some white, titanium white, directly on the painting on the left side to lighten it up, and keeping the right side a little brighter. So I get some variety in that sky and some texture. And now I'm adding that yellow to the reflection in the water. All right, so now I'm putting in the dark side of the trees using yellow ochre and ultramarine blue mixed together, a little heavier on the ultramarine blue to give me that darker color, a bluish green color. And this, again, this is going to be a painting that's going to stay within the yellows to blues. So we're going to have a lot of greens. Some of the greens are going to lean towards the blue. Some of them are going to lean more towards the yellow. Painting back in some of the yellow around the trees I put in. Want to reshape them a little bit. Some negative painting to fix the edges a little. Using a very small flat brush to make those corrections. And back to the dark bluish green to put the dark on that last tree on the left, which is the foreground tree. Next, I'm coming in with a little lighter green. It's still pretty dark, but you can definitely see the green. It's a high chroma for that dark green. And now I'm coming back in with a lighter green. So I've got three colors of greens, a dark, a medium, and a lighter color. And I'm going to come back in over the top of that lighter color with an even lighter one yet to bring out some more contrast and that developed shape. So I'm using 4 different colors of green in this when I'm done. And of course, those greens are all based on yellow ochre, ultramarine blue, and then I've lightened them up with some cad yellow light and maybe a little bit of titanium white when needed, but I'm lightening those up mostly with a cad yellow light to get that brighter chroma, brighter green color there to really bring out the sky color as well and give me some nice heavy contrast with the dark side of the tree. And it still allows me plenty of contrast with the sky because I'm leaning much more towards the green than what the sky is. Not going to overwork these trees, just want to create that shape going from the dark side to the bright side. Wanting to keep them somewhat uniform though on where the shadow would start and end. Going back in a little darker again. Doing a little bit of massaging and work back and forth. Wanted to try and get a nice feel for it. With that done, I move to the trees further back and I'm going in with lighter values. I want that to be a softer greens, but I'm not afraid of the chroma back here. I brought the chroma down a little bit from what was maybe in the front, but I'm not too concerned about it, like I said, because the value is going to push it back. And with that, the high chroma in the sky back there, I don't have to drop this chroma too much to create the effect I'm after. Doing the same thing, I'm going to shape those trees with 3 or 4 different colors of greens, lighter greens, and I have thinned these down quite a bit with the cad yellow light in order to get them this bright of a green, this light of a green. You see on one side, on the ones on the left, I work from the dark to the light side, and this one I've gone the other direction. No real reason for doing that. Just that's what I felt like doing. I wanted to make sure I got the I've got the values correctly. So it just seemed like it might be easier for me to start from the higher value light side and go the other direction. Wanting to make sure I keep though the overall value beneath and softer, a lot less bright or dark than the trees on the right, to keep that illusion that they are being pushed back. So I can go a little brighter on those. And I'm going to take some of that brightness and brighten up the sides of my trees on the left. Again, pull those a little more forward because I got that nice contrast with the dark, so that pulls that forward some for me. Now for the tree trunks, I start out with some burnt sienna and I lighten it up quite a bit with titanium white. And I'm going to come back in with some darker colors for that, and use some lighter to give it shape. And I'm going to use that color on the bottom shoreline here with these rocks to get started with, just to kind of begin to block those in a little sharper. I'll probably come in a little more dark, but I'm going to start layering in the reflection using that color. And as you can tell by looking at my final painting, that I do a lot of work on the shadows in the rocks to bring those colors into the more bluish side of the painting, the green. So it gives me some nice contrast. I think that grayish green that I put into the boulders at the end, I think that ties everything together well. It gives me some nice contrast without altering the feel of the painting. So now I start coming in with some grays that are leaning towards blue and maybe a little bit of greenish hue in them. I don't want to go with just a flat gray, so I start out with a darker one. And again, I start with a two-tone, dark and light, and then I will begin to come in with that right there is titanium white that I'm putting. I think it does have a little bit of the gray in it, only because I didn't clean my brush. But I'm allowing that titanium white I'm picking up to blend right on the board as I put it in, and re-emphasizes some of the darks. Just allowing the brush strokes to show through and give texture and contour. Not trying to, again, overwork that, but embrace the brush strokes for this kind of painting. You want those to pop out. You want those to be different for your rocks. Rocks are seldom smooth. They're lumpy and jagged, and all kinds of different textures on them. And so I use a smaller brush, this smaller flat brush, and I just allow the shape of the brush and the various strokes to give it contour and texture. Coming in with a lighter color on top of that as well. Working that down a little bit. You just kind of got to get a feel for these, but without overworking them. You can easily get to where you're constantly chasing a better looking rock, only to find out you painted over the best looking rock 10 minutes ago. Now I'm adding some various color shades to these rocks. You see me bringing some yellows. You see me bringing some yellowish greens. I brought in a little burnt sienna lightened up. I just want to create different color patterns on those rocks to make them pop out and stand out a little bit different. I'm going to now using a dark color. It's not black. It's made out of the burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. And I'm using that to create some crevasses in the rocks and some cracks and some texture. And using the rigger brush and loading it up. I have to use that rigger. We got to get in there with some paint that's thinned down quite a bit. I'm just using my mineral spirits to thin those down, and creating just a little bit of texture here and there with that. I brought in some light white there just to take away a little bit from that dark edge. Now I'm bringing in some various colors of greenishes, and just making some subtle changes to those rocks, bringing in some of the sky color that's going to reflect off of it. And I think it adds a nice touch to bring that sky color down, and just those brilliant greens, and just put a little hint of it into the rocks. Doing sort of some of the same with these tree trunks, allowing the dark color that I used, ultramarine blue and burnt sienna, and I've lightened that up in several different ways, coming back in to darken up the shadowed side a little bit, adding a little bit of the greenish yellows into those as well. And now I'm going to start bringing in various hues of green some higher chroma, some lower chroma, some darker colors. Again, all based on yellow ochre, ultramarine blue, and then pulling in cad yellow light. I think I do eventually bring in also some cad yellow mediums into those a little bit, but not too much in this painting. I want to keep it focused more on the cad yellow light ranges. I'm going to slow this down a little bit so we can watch some of the techniques I use to create these little hints of grasses on this foreground. I like to add little details like that using that rigger brush. Again, when you use that rigger, you've got to thin that paint down. I'm using mineral spirits. There's various other products you might want to use instead of mineral spirits to thin that down. But I come in and just pull up some color, create little hints of grasses. I'm using a lighter medium green here at the moment, but I come in with and I layer those grasses with different values of the greens to create depth within it. So I start off with this green. It's kind of a medium green, and again, just flicking up some grass there, using the tip of the rigger brush to pull up some little hints of grasses growing up. And there you see me laying it on its side and flicking that up a little bit. It's another way to create clumps of grass that gives you a randomness to the look. Lay it on its side and flick it up a little bit. And how much you flick it up and how heavy you load the brush gives you various different types of looking grass textures. So keep that in mind. You might just practice that on some of your paintings as well. So I create these small grasses using both techniques. Lay it on its side and flick it up, or just use the tip of the brush. There we go. I kind of load it and lay it on its side and just flick it up a little bit. That was very lightly loaded and just flicking up probably the front 1/8 of the brush is all. Other times I'll come in with a heavier loaded brush and flick the whole thing up for larger chunks of grass. So now that I got that first layer on, now I'm coming up with another layer of grasses just in front of it that's using a higher chroma, brighter green to create grasses. That gives me depth. Now this yellow I'm bringing in has a little more cad yellow medium in it, and it gives you a little more towards the red side of the yellow, but it puts a nice bright greenish yellow in there. And then I started in with a darker green towards the very left edge of the painting. And I like to use that darker on the edges to kind of keep your eye trapped in the painting. I'm also going to use that darker green around the base of the trees where it would be more shaded and shadowy. Again, that adds depth to my grasses that I'm putting in, and adds depth and variety to my landscape. Yes, so this is not the kind of painting I would call a loose painting. I don't tend to do loose a lot. I like loose portions of my paintings, but I don't like loose everywhere. It's just not the style. It's not what I enjoy painting. So I like to do loose in various parts of the painting, and then I like to put in detail like this to draw the viewer's eye towards the focal area, which would be this foreground peninsula here that's made out of this bedrock and trees and grasses. So I'll bring in some darker green to add contour, texture, and depth to that. I want to do a little bit more grasses in this foreground with a darker green at normal speed so you can get a feel and another look at how I do that. Just take that darker green, and now I'm using the tip of the brush to just bring up some darker grasses right out of that area. Again, you can see it begins to create depth and contour and shape to my painting in my foreground. Bring in a little more dark color along that edge to keep the eye from falling off and drifting out of the frame of the painting. I'm going to break up some of that foreground a little bit. See how I lay it on its side sometimes, and now I'm just using the tip to create some texture in that color to kind of mush it around a little bit. And coming in with some more of the dark green, using the tip of the brush to create some smaller patch of grass there. And now drag that around a little bit to create contour and just a little bit of grass down here close to the edge. Got to be careful not to overdo it, but you can create some nice contour with your grasses in this way. Break up that solidness of the foreground. And it's important. It can be really fun to do this, so it's important not to have too much fun and end up filling your whole page with a bunch of this detail, because that too much of this will create too much detail and make your painting a little too busy. You just want that perfect balance where it brings depth and contrast and contour and a little bit of variety without making it feel overwhelming. When you start out oil painting and acrylic painting, you can get scared to add dark colors in there, but selectively adding the dark colors brings your painting alive. It creates some real contrast and depth. I think being too afraid to bring in the dark colors is one of the things that's going to make your paintings look childish and undone and unfinished and just not alive. It hinders the impact of your painting if you don't have the dark colors. So don't be afraid to add darker colors into your paintings. It adds great impact and catches the viewer's eye. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put this back into fast motion so we can move along a little bit. I'm about done putting the grasses into the foreground. Using another lighter, lower chroma green to just add a little contrast in and break up some of that dark green in the higher chroma greens that we have there. Now for the water, I'm coming in with a darker color that I use for the crevices in the rocks, just to put a base down. Then I'm going to start coming in with lighter colors that more reflect the various colors of gray that I had. I've still got those colors on my palette, so I'm bringing those in to create reflections, working from the dark colors to the light colors. And I'm using a small flat, that very small, about an 1/8 inch flat brush. I like to use it. Yeah, it gives me great control, allows me to put in some small colors. It's a little bigger than obviously a rigger, but it allows me, especially when I'm doing water and textures like this. Again, I could go more with a suggestive look, but I kind of like the water this way. Let's just put it that way. I like to use broken color effects in my water, which is what I'm doing here. So I'm using various colors of the grayish, bluish, greenish colors in a broken color type effect to create reflection, which helps create like movement in the water, as well as reflect the colors that I have in the rocks. Now I'm going to start bringing in some of the greens down here to reflect some of the trees above. So the greens and the yellows, kind of working those in. You know, water reflections work in this way. The when the light reflects it, it often reflects it darker than it is when it's a light color, and lighter when it is when it's a dark color. So it pulls the lights closer to the darks and the darks closer to the lights, but you can still tell the difference from the darks and the lights. So you don't have to go as dark in your water as you would, say, in the trees, and you don't have to go as light or as high a chroma in the water as you would in the sky or the trees as well. So you kind of settle in a little closer to the middle on both of those. Now, the exception to that would, of course, be when you've got, a really bright sky and you can have reflections of the sun. So you get a really brilliant, pure titanium white type reflection, or a titanium white with some cobalt blue or something like that. Really gives you a really soft but bright blue reflection. You can get those as well. But you see I'm using the broken color effect, which is to use lots of different colors. Now I'm coming in with a really soft blender brush, which I don't use very often, but I just felt like for this painting, I didn't want to make the water and the colors in the water too harsh as far as their edges. So I go in and I soften up those by wiping it back and forth, because I want those reflections to ripple side to side, not long way or up and down. Sometimes you do want your water to reflect, to shimmer up and down, but in this case I want a side to side look. I brought a little bit of the brown in to kind of give me a little hint of the tree trunks. I'm also coming in, we see with some of the greens to break up that gray where the rock reflection is, and with that greens. And I also want to soften those edges in the water where the gray rocks the meet the greenish yellowish water. So kind of breaking that up, so I don't want it to be too harsh of a difference. So adding some color into the grays and fixing those edges so they're not quite as sharp. And that brings us to the end of this painting. A yellow lake with a brilliant yellow sky and some whimsical trees set along the shoreline, which is framed by the heavy rocks that we have there. I think it turned out nice. It's a different sort of painting, and it has a nice palette color. So, hey, thanks for watching all the way to the end. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed it. And for now, this is the Big Toad, and I am out.